Welcome to Think for Yourself Clubhouse. I'm Bill Martin, and my guest today is Brian Deere. And Brian is running for Ohio's Senate 17th District. First thing we'd better do is see if we can get the counties in the Ohio Senate 17th District. Now, I took the note when we were doing our prep, and I'm going to rattle them off, and you see if I get anything wrong.
Okay, because my notes
are all right? Because your notes are over there, and we're going to leave them over there.
Okay.
The counties are Perry, Fayette, Highland, Hawking, Gallia, Jackson, Lawrence, Pike, Ross, and Vinton. In other words, you got a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir.
All right. A little personal background. You indicated to me that you have a background in law enforcement. Where did you start on that?
From 1989 to 2001 at the Sheriff's Department. I was a corrections officer, I was a deputy sheriff, and then I became the jail administrator.
So you moved up in that particular job as a public employee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicated in your prep that you've got some small business experience. I think you used the phrase mom and pop carryout.
Yeah, owner operator. That's why. I would say it like that. That's what I did. Yes.
And how many years did you do that?
14.
And do you feel like you made some progress?
When I first got the store, the sales were struggling, and within 3 years of buying the store, it was the best carryout in Ironton, Ohio. And it still is.
At least of that size, yeah.
Yes.
And you indicated that you've done some coaching.
Done a lot of coaching. I've done a lot of different sports. I've coached volleyball, basketball, soccer, track and field at the youth levels, the middle school levels, and the high school levels.
You're married?
For 30 years.
And your wife is, I believe, in the education profession?
Yes, sir. She's a fourth grade language arts teacher at Dawson Bryant School District.
I asked you during prep, here we are in this great big district, and it's been Republican probably for years, and you're just a little old Democrat. And what was it that would cause you to actually run for public office and go through all this difficulty? And I think what you told me was you've been talking to your wife.
Yes. My wife would have been classified as probably the least political person that you'd ever know. And then in 2012, they passed House Bill 12. And it started chipping away at the public school system.
We've done a lot of these podcasts, and one of the themes we've had is that the state legislature has been squeezing public schools. And I think perhaps that's what your wife is feeling.
She is. And as a coach, I have seen what it does to the bus drivers, to the custodians, to the cooks, to the secretaries. The workers there, all of them are terrified that the funding being cut are going to cost them their jobs.
Is it fair to say that if you make it to Columbus, one of the big things you do is try to work on school funding?
Yes, that would be accurate.
In our prep, you said, Bill, my number one issue is school funding. And you said you'd been around talking to some folks, and whenever you talk to people, just in the course of campaigning, people talk to you. They tell you what some of these problems are that they're encountering. And what sorts of problems have you run up against?
I've senior care, homelessness, health insurance.
You also indicated a very interesting remark. I thought we had a little chat in this mom and pop store, this little commercial enterprise you had. You thought that you were being treated unfairly in the commercial world. Can you explain what you mean by that?
When you're a mom and pop store sole proprietor, you don't sell as much as a Walmart or a Kroger, somebody like that. And my pricing was way higher to buy the goods from Pepsi and Coke and Marlboro than it would have was for Walmart and Kroger's and those places.
So there was obviously discriminatory pricing going on, and that was to the disadvantage of the small guy.
Yes, that's the reason I sold my store. Is I just could not afford to buy the goods, sell them. One of the things when you buy beer in Ohio from the wholesaler, they tell you what you have to sell it for. So it's you can't sell it for less than 25% of what. So if you buy something for $10, you gotta sell it for $12.50. That's the state law. Now you can sell it for more, but the incentive is to keep it at $12.50. So the cigarette companies, when you buy a pack of Marlboro, there's an 8% markup on those. Well, so $1 or $10 would be $10.80. When I buy those for $10, somebody that owns 3 or 4 stores gets that product for $9, and they get Pepsi for cheaper than what I get it, and they're still selling it close to the price I have.
So you're in a position to be able to say when you go to Columbus that there are some disadvantages that the small guy has, and we ought to at least pay attention to that and see if that's fair.
Small to me isn't someone that owns a business and has 100, 150, 200 employees. I know that's probably classified as small, but if you've got 10 people, there's got to be like something for the guy who's just there with him. And like my carryout had me and 4 other employees. That was it. That's a small business. The person that has a photography shop and it's just her.
Plumber with 1 truck.
Yeah, those are small business people. The people, when they talk about small business owners, I'm a small business owner. A guy that has 50 trucks, and those guys aren't small business people. They're making millions of dollars.
Okay, I think we didn't want to go too long today, so I think I'm going to kind of wrap it up for our viewers and say Brian is obviously a regular guy running for political office, and we ought to pay attention to that. He's come up with many of the same issues that the rest of us worry about. School funding is a big one.
Yes.
And he says he thinks there ought to be fairness and an even level playing field in the commercial world. Nothing wrong with those ideas, and I hope he does well. Obviously not a real sophisticated politician type, didn't pretend to be. But he's going to be a candidate for 17th District, Ohio State Senate. Best of luck to you, Brian.
Thank you, Bill.